The peanut butter and jelly sandwich is part of the Mount Rushmore of sandwiches. So classic, so delicious, so simple. Nothing in life is quite as comforting as a good old PB&J. That marriage between salty peanut butter and that sweet and sugary jelly is what makes this sandwich stick out among the rest. But what happens when you take away the jelly? You get a standard peanut butter sandwich. Not bad per se, just kinda bland. Halo Infinite multiplayer feels like a peanut butter sandwich. It isn't bad, in fact it's actually a lot of fun sometimes, but it's missing many key features, some of which are coming soon, but others are more up in the air. I really want to love Halo Infinite multiplayer, but right now my friends and I would rather play MCC than engage with the current live service Halo title, and as a longtime Halo fan that makes my heart hurt. But you can only ask me to eat a peanut butter sandwich for so long before I yearn for some sweet and delicious jelly. Let's start with maps. Halo is a series known for its stellar map design. While Infinite doesn't have any straight up bad maps, it doesn't really have any standouts either. The most notable two for me being Recharge and Behemoth. The latter with its focus on being a 4v4 map with vehicles, and the former by being the closest thing Infinite has to a classic Halo map. Even then, what is Behemoth compared to something like High Ground? Behemoth is just a circle for vehicles and a center for boots on the ground combat, where High Ground has a team that spawns with worse positioning on the beach, but better equipment like an overshield and sniper rifle, as well as a few battle rifles laying around. The other team will spawn in a crumbling UNSC base that has a more fortified position and close range weapons to deal with the attackers. There are tons of ways to enter the base as an attacker as well. Going through the bunker, which even has a hatch that can be shot to provide a quick opening from the top, through the front gate if it's open depending on the game mode, ascending the crumbled wall on the right side, sneaking through the pipes in that same area, and some more that we will get to later in this video. This map is much more dynamic than Behemoth in pretty much every way. It creates a unique tale of assault or defense each match regardless of game mode. Behemoth, on the other hand, is basically just a new rendition of Sandbox or Rat's Nest from Halo 3. Not a bad map by any means, but done before. While Behemoth is a much more visually appealing map than Sandbox, it doesn't play nearly as well due to it forcing vehicles to move around the outside of the map rather than giving them places to engage with the more chaotic middle ground. Recharge is probably the closest Halo Infinite gets to a classic Halo 2 or 3 map in terms of quality, but if you ask me to pick between Recharge or Guardian, I would choose Guardian for its better atmosphere and more inspired weapon spawn points. I would pick something like Lockout for the same reasons. Other maps like Streets and Livefire are asymmetrical in ways that are pretty negligible and mostly feel the same regardless of which side you start on. While the purely symmetrical maps like Aquarius and Catalyst are pretty fun, they do suffer from that design choice, as starting on either side of the map feels analogous to the other, creating an experience that can become repetitive. Also, what happened to all the hazards and interactables on maps? Halo 2 Anniversary multiplayer may just be an odd mix of Halo 2 gameplay and the Halo 4 engine, but its maps were awesome. Zenith had the ability for players to activate a huge dome shield in the middle of the map to defend from snipers and battle rifles. This provided a dynamic play experience each match that was completely in the player's control. Shrine had something similar, with each base having a waterfall that could be activated to block line of sight in or out of the base. In a game mode like CTF, this could be used in ways to make it easier to grab the enemy's flag, or stop an advance by leaving the enemy with a level of uncertainty of how many players were inside the base. The map Lockdown is a remake of the map Lockout that adds 3 ice pillars that can be shot down to kill enemies camping a power position. There is also an energy shield in mid-map that could be used to access the lower platform. It was a map that asked players to think about where they were stepping and to look up rather than just run around corners and shoot enemies. It feels like all, or at least most of the maps in Halo Infinite were created to be competitively viable instead of dynamic and interesting. All these maps are decent in that context, but have a game feel that is similar from match to match. A good Halo Arena map should focus on providing a unique experience in an interesting location, but most Halo maps in Infinite lack at least one of those features. Streets is an awesome idea for a level and has some good atmosphere, but falls short in bringing something new to the table in terms of map design. Launchpad does play differently to the other maps due to its asymmetrical layout, but it feels like a first draft after a gray box when it comes to the art direction. Even with Recharge being my favorite map, it doesn't come close to the atmosphere provided by Guardian from Halo 3. I really like Guardian. This doesn't even take into account the big team battle maps that were a more clear-cut step down from what came before. With the exception of the newest map Breaker, which has a more inspired design, the 3 maps that Infinite launched with are pitiful. Fragmentation is a map that has way too much clutter, making vehicles a challenge to use, while High Power is the opposite, and has such long and exposed sightlines that peeking out for even a second can have you shot from 5 different directions at once. Deadlock is the best of these, but lacks character. The biggest problem I have with these 3 maps is that they are fundamentally the same. All 3 have a base that you start at and don't really differentiate themselves. On a map-to-map basis, they feel the same regardless of which one you spawn in on, and even in that match, which base you spawn on also feels similar. This isn't necessarily inherently bad, but when every map plays like that, there is a problem. While I think they're better designed, Standoff and Valhalla from Halo 3 also play like this. But in that game, there are other maps that offer a separate experience. Compare those maps to a map like Last Resort that is similar in its design to High Ground, but with more players and better vehicles. It has a distinct play experience depending on which side of the map you spawn in on. Or a map like Sandtrap that has 2 giant elephant vehicles on it that act as mobile bases and can house players and small to medium sized vehicles. The amount of unique experiences that 2 teams can craft on the map Sandtrap is just baffling, whereas the BTB maps in Infinite feel formulaic and derivative of one another. This also doesn't take into account the way that Halo Infinite has chosen to spawn in vehicles. In prior games, the vehicles would spawn on timers and gave plenty of chances to use them. You could hop into a Wraith in the very first few seconds of a match, unless, of course, somebody beat you to it. Now it feels like Wraiths don't even spawn in until the game is practically over. The only time I can even recall using a Wraith was during a Fiesta match on the Arena map launchpad, because it was randomizing the vehicles. I don't think I have ever used a Scorpion or a Wraith in BTB, because you are only given 1 or 2 per match, and good luck getting them when everyone knows where they're being dropped off and have ample time to get there. Halo's vehicles are such a massive part of why people love playing BTB, and their restrictive nature in Infinite is what has driven my friends and I to play more MCC rather than the current rendition. Another side of things is equipment. While I love everything currently in Halo Infinite's equipment pool, it certainly lacks the kind of character that some of the equipment in Halo 3 had. While you won't see anybody advocating for the flare to come back, I would imagine that pretty much every Halo fan would love to see the return of the gravity lift, bubble shield, and landmine. While the power drain and the regenerator may be more controversial, I would argue that their inclusion would be an overall positive for the game. The thing that makes these equipments so exciting is their functional neutrality. The bubble shield blocks all incoming projectiles but also doesn't allow the player inside to fire back. It was a tool that could be used to great effect, but also one that could be used against the player who placed it. Same with the power drain, that could quickly deplete an enemy's shields, but could also do the same to the user if they aren't careful about where they throw it. Going back to the map High Ground, we can see why something like the gravity lift is an overall net positive for the game. Located on the left side of the map, when starting on the beach, the grav lift adds another way to enter the defender's base. A more dynamic and exciting way at that, one that can catch the defenders off guard if they aren't ready for it. This rewards a player using the grav lift with a sense of satisfaction for the idea to use it in this way, and rewards all players involved in the interaction with a unique and memorable experience during the match. While Infinite's grapple hook is orgasmic, its deployable cover nice in a pinch, its threat sensor, it doesn't hold a candle to the unique engagements possible with the neutral focused design of Halo 3's equipment. At least 343 seems to be going in the right direction with their newest piece of equipment, the Shroud Screen. This appears to be Halo's take on a smoke grenade that allows nobody to see through it, but everyone can shoot through it. It is a nice piece of neutral equipment, and I'm happy to see Infinite moving in a more interesting direction. If one were to ask me, my least favorite gun in Halo Infinite would be the Hydra. When I saw this thing for the first time and how it worked, I thought it would be awesome. A clever merging of the Halo 5 Hydra with its focus on lock-on, and the Halo 3 Brute Shot with its single-shot rockets that do considerable damage. Then I got the thing and realized that while it still held the identity of the Halo 5 Hydra, it lacked everything that made the Halo 2 and 3 Brute Shot so exciting to wield. I guess I shouldn't be so hard on the Hydra itself because it really isn't the poor little weapon's fault, but rather the fault of the physics that robs the weapon of everything unique that the Brute Shot brought to the table. For one, the Brute Shot could send weapons and environmental pieces flying, creating a satisfying weight to each shot. You could even blow away pieces of cover. This blowback effect also applies to players. It can be used to force an enemy out of position or even blast them off the map when they jumped. Perhaps the most exciting use was to shoot it at the ground and perform a rocket jump of sorts. This could be used to reposition in ways that weren't possible without it, but also took a small chunk of shields to use. The poor Gravity Hammer Man has also had its unique environmental interactions stripped out for no real reason. All these effects have been shoved into the repulsor equipment that is amazing in its own right, but why did it have to come at the cost of the plethora of physics interactions available in Halo 3? Or Reach? Grenade jumping is gone, and player collision has been stripped out as to not have teammates bumping into each other occasionally. It dampens the experience, causing it to be more about the core gameplay of running around and shooting things, which in turn pushes the game into being a more generic shooter like its contemporaries. It feels like Halo Infinite has weapons designed to be effective at their target range rather than designed to be interesting. The aforementioned changes to the physics are part of that, but also in the design of other weapons. No longer can sniper bullets ricochet off the environment and kill players that weren't even being aimed at. No longer does the shotgun have a unique role, but exists to be a marginal improvement at close range, rather than the absolute monster it used to be. They also stripped it of its unique reload where it was shell loaded. Instead, now there is just a magazine that makes it like every other weapon in the arsenal. The Sentinel Beam had something similar happen when they removed the overheat mechanic in favor of another generic reload like everything else. All the plasma weapons can be vented now, which effectively acts as a reload, robbing them of requiring the player to balance damage and heat dynamically. Not that you would want to use the plasma weapons anyway, as the pulse carbine's homing means nothing when the players are so fast, and the plasma pistol had its ability to stun vehicles removed. There are some cool interactions, such as the shock weapons dealing additional shock damage to nearby players, or them blatantly stealing the vehicle stun from the plasma pistol, but they don't make up for what was lost in the process. I could make a whole video about how Forge is still missing and only going into beta, whatever that means in real terms, but what is the point? If you were anywhere as big of a Halo fan as I am, you know why missing Forge is tragic. Even with its release being soon, I would argue that Forge being in the game still isn't going to be relevant until the customs game browser comes out in Season 3. And just a quick reminder, we have to wait until March to get that. Theater mode is still a buggy mess, and God only knows if the file share feature will even be remotely functional with the release of Forge. The UI is slow and cumbersome, and the overall feel of the menus is uninspired. The technical state of Halo Infinite is shaky, and my patience is wearing thin. I've played this franchise for over 20 years, and with each release since 343 took over, my confidence has eroded in this franchise. This game has a lot of promise, and is easily the best that 343 has put out since taking the helm, but they're giving me a goddamn peanut butter sandwich, and all I want is the sweet jelly that I used to have. The thing that frustrates me the most about Halo Infinite is how buried somewhere in there is an extremely fun sandbox-driven game. Take this clip where I repulse jump and skewer somebody. I did this because I thought it would look cool, and it does. If I let this clip play out, you can also see me try to hit a rocket repulse to complete this play with some style. This wasn't something that a weekly challenge told me to do, it was something that I thought would be cool and engaged with on my own terms. The rocket I returned didn't quite make it back to sender, but now I have that idea in my head, and it's something that I want to try to do again in the future. However, I'm heavily encouraged not to play this new game mode when there are no challenges present. In order to get to play this fun game mode that leans into what makes Halo unique from the other titles on the market, and progress my battle pass, I need to hope that I have challenges available for it. While this challenge and battle pass problem is not unique to Halo Infinite, it does dampen this game more than any other I've seen. While the sandwich analogy was just a way to grab your attention, the overall thesis of this video is this. What Halo multiplayer has always been about is moments. Not battle passes or ranked placings, but individual moments, and sharing those moments with friends and strangers alike. Some of the most fun I've ever had playing Halo are moments when something stupid happens with the physics, or playing innovative custom games with friends, or using the sandbox to do something unique and exciting. I got Onyx in Halo Infinite ranked multiplayer when it first came out. But who cares? I completed the Season 1 Battle Pass, but do you give a shit? Do I? Not really, which is why I haven't even bothered to try and finish the current Battle Pass yet. What I do care about are all the MCC clips I was able to get in just a few nights with the boys, because they represent everything that Halo used to get right. Creating a sandbox that led to players making their own fun in ways the developers could never have imagined. That is what Halo is all about. If the culmination of this franchise's ambition is to be another mindless multiplayer game, where players shell out $10 every couple months for battle passes to do challenges they don't even care about, rather than lean into what makes these games unique, then I'm done, man. I'm sick of the heart of my favorite franchise being shelved to push it into a more generic middle ground between its contemporaries. One standard I try and hold myself to is not attacking game developers, and that isn't changing here. As far as I can tell, Halo Infinite's current state is due to mismanagement and a lack of vision from its higher-ups. Most of those people are gone now. I understand that Infinite has a lot of technical debt stuff that they need to work through before it can have a proper content model going forward, and I hope the changes made to the leadership at 343 will be healthier for the company overall. With cool events like the Yappening recapturing what the Halo series is capable of with its unique sandbox design, I hope 343 can either correct Infinite or start work on a game that is truly representative of what Halo multiplayer was all about.
Territory lost.
What do you got? Tax.
Territory captured.
I'm going in! I'm going in!
You're not going in. You can't make it.
Yeah, going insane, bro.
Oh,